Over at DC Comics, the publisher's Lazarus Planet event was a fantastic comic book storyline that utilized so many different disparate plot elements and locations of the DC universe to tell a really interesting story. Essentially, sort of like the beginnings of the story can be traced back to the issues of Batman versus Robin, where Batman and Robin were duking it out over in the mysterious Lazarus Island when a volcano erupted, causing Lazarus resin to be spread across the DC universe. And this went on to affect not only just Gotham City or one portion of DC, but to several different locations, causing characters like Wonder Woman to be enveloped in the madness. And now DC is looking to take some plot threads over from Lazarus Planet We Once Were Gone's, utilizing characters like Shazam and Wonder Woman to explore some of the after effects of that comic book storyline with the continuation of Lazarus Planet in Lazarus Planet Revenge of the Gods #1. My name is Arako Braddock, and today let's go ahead and jump into the return of Lazarus Planet. But before we dive deeper into the video, I want to go ahead and encourage you to consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that like button if you enjoy our content. And I want to go ahead and introduce Lazarus Planet Revenge of the Gods #1 with the first out of 2 creative teams. This first story is called Revenge of the Gods and is written by Willow Wilson, illustrated by Cian Tormey, colored by Jordie Bellaire, lettered by Pat Brosseau, and we have a gorgeous cover that I'm actually going to go ahead and show off right now over from artist Guillem March. I just want to take a step back here and shout out Guillem March's art. I've always been so fascinated and interested in March and just the way he sort of draws these like really angular lines and really captures like the most expressive and extreme character reactions. It is such a joy to look at how March sort of renders the page. Sadly, he's only drawing the cover for Lazarus Planet Revenge of the Gods, but we are treated to some absolutely gorgeous artwork in the interior pages over from artist Cian Tormey, who I think really captures like the expressive and kind of angular lines that you would hope for over in a kind of like Lazarus Planet title that has to deal with, you know, so many characters and multiple casts of different books. I really think this issue was paced incredibly well over from writer Willow Wilson. I love how kind of, you know, the expansive art towards the beginning sets up all these sort of like mysterious sequences, and then we sort of see the god who is manipulating the events of the issue sort of behind the scenes, and just the way that this is written and illustrated from Wilson and Tormey leads to just a sort of great plot reveal that expands on not only kind of the title of the series, but where some of the plotting goes as well. You know, this issue really kind of seamlessly was able to implement plot elements over from, you know, Themyscira with Wonder Woman, Yaraflor, and Nubia, and over with the Shazam property with billybatson, who's even featured over on this next page. I would say that this first issue is more focused on the character of Wonder Woman in particular and sort of her supporting cast. You know, we also get some really fantastic moments with Wonder Woman supporting characters like yaraflor. I really appreciate how this latest kind of run over on Wonder Woman, you know, with Michael Conrad and Becky Cloonan has been focused on fleshing out not just kind of Diana as Wonder Woman, but with the supporting cast of characters as well. I love that DC is continuing to kind of focus on all of the different Amazons and what they bring to the table. I really appreciate the fact that there's sort of a separate plot thread in this issue specifically for Hippolyta. And I really have to hand it to kind of color artist Jordie Bellaire. There's so many different like settings and locations in the issue, and it really seems like, you know, Cian Tormey's art is able to change on a dime depending on what the scene calls for. But we also have this kind of beautiful color palette shifting whenever the issue calls for it over from Jordie Bellaire. You know, the blues of Tokyo contrast so nicely with these greens over in Iceland. And I think it just helps make Cian Tormey's art look sort of even more expressive in that context. And the issue as well was sort of had so many interesting and like fascinating plot elements too. I really love the way that these sort of Wizard and Hera are manipulating things kind of from the onset of the issue. It feels like there's so much sort of exploration of what it means to be a god in this series. And I really appreciated the way that Hera kind of, sets herself up as a god, but then takes a step back and essentially explains how some aspects of gods and mortals are the same. And it's just sort of a matter of perspective outside of that physical power. So I really enjoyed kind of seeing that sort of like battle of wits between Hera and Diana. Diana essentially going along with what Hera said and then sort of regretting it later as a sort of after effect. I thought that was very interesting. And then also, kind of the final page teases a new status quo reveal that I think could lead to something, really interesting in some of the later issues of this series. And I want to go ahead and talk about the second story in this issue called The Stranger. This one is written by Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad. It is penciled by Alitha Martinez, inked by Mark Morales and John Livesay, and colored by Alex Guimaraes. Plus, we have letters over from Becca Carey. So, regarding this second story, it really sort of took me on an emotional roller coaster because I expected that I knew everything the stranger had to offer within the first couple of pages when sort of a crew of YouTubers or influencers, try to kind of hitch a ride over to Paradise Island to capture some video footage. And I thought I knew sort of like every single plot thread that this story would kind of throw at me. I thought it would be sort of like a monotonous and uninteresting way to kind of like reintroduce some of the aspects and Amazons over from Themyscira and Paradise Island. But about halfway through the story, there was a massive twist that happened over from Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad. And I really enjoyed the way that they sort of kind of flipped the perspective on readers and then introduced some new story elements and elements that were introduced in the past story. I thought the way that they took, sort of like an ancillary character and then reintroduced them over in this second tale was just such a genius way to plot out this story and sort of introduces a really sort of in-depth way to kind of read the issue again. Because if you look and try and catch up on clues as to who this stranger character is, I think you'll see even more depth within this issue. And I just love the sort of kind of playful nature of this story and how certain aspects of it will go on to inform the main series. I did find some of the art over from Alitha Martinez to be a little bit too serious in some of the pages, and I don't think we quite get the quite like correct facial expressions for some of the characters, and it does, I think, detract from my enjoyment of the series ever so slightly. But I think as we get sort of deeper into this story and start seeing some of the facial expressions on the Amazon characters, the art does get a little bit more expressive and animated, just depending on sort of what page you're looking at and how deep into the story you are. But definitely the way that this story kind of takes some plot elements from the first one and then reintroduces them in a new context is just a great way to sort of utilize the medium of comics and tell a really interesting story. Plus, I frequently see comic book issues that have two stories that have nothing to do with each other. So sort of implementing and utilizing story elements from both is just kind of a fascinating way to plot out an issue of a series like this. So overall, I was very happy to be able to return to Lazarus Planet over in Lazarus Planet Revenge of the Gods #1. I think this is a really kind of solid issue reintroducing Lazarus Planet. I love the fact that DC is sort of going in a bit of a different direction with this. And instead of bringing back kind of like the Devil Nezha over from Batman versus Robin, we're getting a different element of Lazarus Planet fleshed out with sort of the Greek gods and the Shazam and Wonder Woman properties melding together. I want to know from you, were you happy with some of these status quo revelations and where the gods left off with Diana over in Lazarus Planet Revenge of the Gods #1? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for checking out the video, and we'll be back for everything Lazarus Planet, yaraflor, and Wonder Woman related. Please keep it locked over to the channel. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon. Bye.